Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seed 540. I'm so very glad that you're joining us here for this course this semester. I'm going ahead and dive right in and start with the introductions for our very first video for this course. My name is Dr. Sarah Berdamodio, and I've been an educator for over 20 years. I'm a former middle school language arts teacher, a school counselor, and principal. I'm currently in private practice as an educational psychologist, and I have my own educational consulting firm here in Boulder County, Colorado, where I live with my husband, two daughters, which you see here on the screen, a very neurotic but very adorable dachshund, and two cats and two birds. A little bit about myself. My favorite movies are Star Wars and Marvel movies. My favorite book, well, I have so many. I used to be a language arts teacher, but I will always go back and reread A Wrinkle in Time series by Madeleine L'Engle. Fun fact about myself, I can speak French, Swedish, and a little bit of Italian. So the themes for Seed 540 here are we're going to be looking at human development and learning theories, and particularly application to classroom practices. It's not enough for us to learn the theories, we have to know how to apply them in the classroom. We're going to be looking at motivation and learning strategies. For secondary students, this is clearly an issue, so we really want to spend some time diving into this particular theme. And interspersed throughout the entire course, we're going to be looking at equity. We're going to be looking at how equity plays out in various aspects of the secondary education classroom. My expectations of students is that you're consistent in your participation online. It's very easy and it's very tempting for students to fall behind in the online asynchronous format. So I really encourage you to be consistent, and I've designed the class in such a way to help you to be consistent and help with your consistent engagement. It's important that you stay on top of the readings. It's really important that you dive into the readings, spend some time with the readings, and really make sure that you're able to go back into the readings to cite them. Speaking of which, cite the readings in your postings on the discussion board, making sure that whenever you're putting something out there on the discussion board, it's really pegged back to the readings. Stay in communication with me and your peers as necessary. Make sure you really have a willingness to listen to different viewpoints and that you're open to new ideas. What I love about this class is that it really opens your eyes to new ways of thinking and new ways of viewing education. And please, no offensive language. For example, no cursing on the discussion boards. What you can expect from me, in addition to those things on the left, is that I'll respond to communication during the week in a timely manner within 24 hours. That's a really important thing for me. I hold that dear. I'm going to foster a learning environment where students feel comfortable sharing and exchanging ideas. I'll be sure to keep abreast of current research issues and trends to ensure that you have the most recent and relevant information. And I'll be respectful of your time. I know you've got other things going on, and I want to make sure that this is a good use of your time, and I want to be respectful of that. So, sometimes things go sideways in our lives, and if you encounter any difficulties with the course, or if unexpected life events pop up, please let me know as soon as possible. I'm here to help advocate for you and to help create a positive learning environment for you. But you have to let me know. So please let me know as something does pop up in your life. I'll give you an example. My final year of my doctoral studies, I found out that I was pregnant, and I had to let my instructors and professors know that this was going on. And I was so pleased and so reassured that they were willing to work with me and to make sure that I was able to complete the course and do what I needed to do to learn. And I want to pass that forward. I want to bring that forward. And I'm going to have that same sort of attitude to help advocate for you. But again, you have to let me know so I can help you. All right, so here we go. This is where we get into the overview of the class. We're going to look and see what's ahead of us here in SEED 540. The class is really going to be broken down into 5 separate sections. We're going to have a lecture video that I'll post online every Monday. And in this video, there's going to be an introduction to the readings, a broad overview, and I'll try to explain some of the key concepts and reframe some of the ideas and themes that you're going to be seeing in the readings. We'll also be talking about some case studies in this lecture video. I really encourage you to watch the video first before you dive into some of the other things in the course. After you do the lecture video, please begin the readings on Monday. And after that, on Wednesday, I'll be posting some questions on the discussion boards in Blackboard. You'll be required to do a first response by Saturday and responses to the first responses by Sunday. We'll get into that here in a little bit. There'll also be a weekly quiz that's posted on Sunday. This quiz will be part of your participation grade. There's only going to be 3 questions, and if you do all the things leading up to that, you should do just fine. And there are also assignments with this course, and let's take a look at some of those here right now. So make sure that you read the syllabus first to make sure that you understand what the assignments are all about. It does a really, really good job of outlining the assignments, and there are some rubrics in there to guide your work. So we have here essentially 5 things that are going to be graded in this course. We have here the online participation and quizzes, which I mentioned before, and this will be graded at the end of the course, but you'll be required to do this consistently throughout the course. There's a motivation paper, and we'll be talking about the concepts associated with that in weeks 2 through 6 and then in week 8. There's a theory to practice presentation, and this is a group presentation. You'll be working together with a group of your fellow colleagues here in this course, but there's an individual component to it as well. We'll be talking about that later. There'll be more information on that forthcoming. There's an equity reflection paper, and we'll be talking about this in weeks 9 and in weeks 11 through 13. And then finally, there's a case study and student application project. This is a case study based course, which I find really interesting and really fascinating because, again, we want to make sure that we understand the theory, but we're able to apply it in our classrooms, and case studies are a great way to achieve that. So speaking of case studies, most weeks we're going to be looking at case studies from the Gorski and Porthini book, which I sometimes will be calling the little book. At least one of the discussion board threads will be about the case studies when we do have case studies that week. During the case studies, when we using those case studies, we'll be discussing in class and using that as a model. And you'll be asked to analyze the case study and apply that case study to a particular student in the application case study and student application project. So in essence, we're going to be showing you and modeling how you can do that paper all throughout the course. These case studies are to support real-world application and to help you with that project. So make sure that you're really paying attention to those case study elements in our course because that will help you to be successful in this paper. Okay, as I mentioned briefly before, again, this is an autonomous class and it follows the autonomous learning model. So what does that mean? That means that while there's no set time where we meet as a class each week, certain learning tasks need to be completed that week. So you're still required to kind of keep up with the class and make sure that you're doing all the course requirements all throughout the course. There will be some optional Zoom meetings throughout the course. I'll make sure that I post them on the discussion board for that particular week. And I've planned on having these Zoom meetings take place on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So just to kind of maybe put that in the back of your mind, maybe put it in your calendar that perhaps that's a time you want to block off just in case there's an optional Zoom meeting you'd like to attend. All right, so all of this seems like a lot. I know. But I have here a suggested schedule that you can follow that I've found very helpful. As I mentioned, on Mondays, that's your time to watch the video and to begin the readings. On Tuesday, that's your work day to continue the readings. On Wednesday, again, that's when I'm going to be posting the discussion board questions. And as part of this, I would really strongly encourage that you read the questions carefully and then write out a draft of your responses, maybe in Word, to make sure that you've got all the little spelling errors corrected, all the grammatical errors corrected. Because again, we want to make sure that this is you're putting your best foot forward on the discussion board. It's a reflection of you. So again, making sure that you're drafting those out, and you can begin posting, doing your first posts on the discussion board on Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, those are your days to go back into Blackboard, read the discussion board postings, and to start working on assignments if we have any for that week. On Saturday, the first posts on the discussion board are due by 11:59 p.m. So make sure you've answered every single thread, every single discussion board question by Saturday. Then Sunday, making sure that you go back and you post responses within each of the threads there. Some students will ask, well, how many responses do I need to do? I think it's fair to say that if someone asks you a question, or if I ask you a question, you probably need to respond. But feel free to respond or comment on other students' work as well. Sunday is going to be your day to take that really quick 3-question quiz. And again, if you've done everything throughout the week, there's no mystery of what these questions are going to be about. And in fact, you can use your notes. You can go back. This is an open note kind of quiz. But it's a way to do that formative assessment that we'll be talking about later in the class, just making sure that you're self-reflecting and self-assessing on how you're doing in the class, and then I can kind of see how you're doing in the class as well. But again, this is part of that participation grade. I'm not necessarily grading for points, I'm grading for participation. All right, each week what I'll be doing is I'll be posting this week's tasks within that week's folder so that you can see what specifically you need to do for each week, and you can use this as a little checklist. I find that very helpful. I'm a checklist kind of gal. I really like to-do lists. This has helped me. I'm hoping that it'll help you. So for each week's tasks, I'll break it down into these 4 sections here. I'll be telling you what you need to read, making sure that that's very clear, the chapters that you need to read and where you can find them. Sometimes I will be posting PDFs or copies or links to other articles or whatnot in the discussion board, so just be forewarned. I'll give you a brief discussion here on what you need to do for the discussion board. I'll make sure that you have the questions there so you can see it, and then a reminder for the quiz, and then the assignments. So here for this week, we have here making sure that you read the syllabus. You read chapter 1 in what I sometimes call the big book. So this is the Egan and Kalchak book. Chapters 1 and 2 in the little book, which is the case studies book, and making sure that you go through the APA guidelines. I'm sure by now you've been exposed to the APA guidelines, but I do really require that the APA guidelines are followed in this class, so you might want to brush up on them a little bit. I will be posting the discussion board questions on Wednesday and making sure that you do that first post and then the responses. And there will be that little quiz on Sunday. Oh, and no assignments this week. All right, so a couple comments on the tasks. Make sure you read the syllabus thoroughly. I strongly recommend that you save a copy of it somewhere so that you can easily reference it. When you do post on the discussion board, make sure that your answer is substantive and referenced. And by that I mean you refer back to the readings. And by substantive, I mean saying things like, I agree or I disagree just doesn't cut it. Make sure you say why or why not. I recommend that you type out your responses in Word first, as I mentioned before, and then cut and paste into the discussion board. Remember that how you present on the discussion board is a reflection of you. Take a look at those APA resource guidelines and just make sure that you understand how to do those citations. All right, so let's dive into the meat of this week here. This week, we're going to be looking at three big concepts. We're going to be looking at what is an equitable educator. We're going to be looking at what is equity literacy. And we're going to be looking at the top 20 principles from psychology for pre-K through 12 teaching and learning, what they are and why you need to know them. So in chapter 1 in the big book, there's a lot there, and it's a great overview of educational psychology, but I really just want to have you kind of look at it from a broad 35,000 foot view, but hone in on those top 20 principles from psychology, because you'll be seeing those throughout the course. All right. So getting back to the equitable educators and equity literacy. As you're going through the readings, I encourage you to think about, what does it mean to be an equitable educator? What does that mean to you? What are the different things that you need to think about when you're thinking about being an equitable educator? And I think that this is a challenging question for a lot of us. Particularly, I mean, I've worked with it, and I've been challenging myself. I've been challenged by colleagues, and I think that it's an ever-evolving concept for each individual person. But I encourage you to start thinking about that right now. What does it mean to be an equitable educator? The other thing that you're going to be seeing is in the readings in the little book, you're going to be seeing something called the Equity Literacy Framework. We'll be using this over and over again when we look at the case studies. And what I like about this particular framework is that it helps to kind of almost put blinders on us to make sure that we're really focusing on equity in the midst of all the noise, right? So when you're looking at what you'll be seeing in a lot of the case studies is just a lot of noise, a lot of extraneous or maybe unnecessary information. But what the equity literacy framework helps you to do is to really hone in on that concept of equity, to move us into that messiness of everything, but to help provide us with a framework that we can use. You'll see in the equity literacy framework that there are different levels of looking at it. So we have here the micro level of looking at equity, and what are the interpersonal relationships, kind of your immediate circle, the meso circle or level, the exo level, and then the macro level of awareness. There's a really nice chart in the big book on chapter 2 corresponding to this discussion, so you get a sense of what the levels maybe look like, and it defines those levels a little bit more clearly. This framework, like I said, is super helpful, and it helps us to follow we follow this framework when we're looking at the case studies, not only for these particular case studies right now, but I'm hoping that this framework can be used in the future when you encounter issues of equity. Okay, so the framework, here it is. The 7 steps in the equity literacy case analysis approach. And following these steps, and it's important on some level that you kind of follow the steps, because you'll see where it kind of leads into kind of an overarching agenda with it. Identifying biases or inequities, taking stocks of various perspectives, consider possible challenges and opportunities, imagine equitable and just outcomes, brainstorm first immediate solutions and then brainstorming long-term solutions, and then creating and crafting a plan of action. So again, we're going to be following this framework when we're looking at the case studies. Okay, so next up here, we have the top 20 principles from psychology for pre-K through 12 teaching and learning. What I like about this section in the big book is that it does a really good job of outlining the major themes and components that you'll find in educational psychology. It follows the major theoretical themes, and it breaks them down so nicely. So we see here that there are the 5 themes of cognition, how you learn, how you develop your learning, motivation, kind of self-explanatory. Social context, interpersonal relations, emotional well-being, classroom management, and assessment. So if you go back into our course schedule, you'll see where the course follows these major theoretical themes laid out in the top 20 principles from Psychology for Pre-K Teaching and Learning. Okay, so please spend some time looking through these. I think it's important that you have a fairly clear understanding about what these major theoretical themes are in educational psychology moving forward. Okay, so getting into these top 20 principles a little bit more. Why do we need to know them? Well, major reason is that it'll help you to answer the question, why are you doing what you're doing? You'll get that question a lot in education, and a lot of people will ask you that question. Why are you doing this in your classroom? Why are you employing this particular educational strategy? Why are you using this particular method of classroom management? So on and so forth. When you're able to reference theory and research to explain and justify what you're doing, it raises your level of professionalism. You'll hear these principles over and over again in your teaching profession. So again, I encourage you to become very well acquainted with them and to understand the theoretical underpinnings of each of them. Okay, so what I have done is that I have put a blank chart in the discussion board for you to go on ahead and complete it and maybe write out each of the principles in that chart. So this follows my personal kind of preference for active learning versus passive learning. I really encourage students to become active learners in class, to really engage all those different modes of learning, do that multimodal learning, not only doing visual, but also auditory and kinesthetic. So I am not going to be grading this particular chart, but I do encourage you to complete it because I think it will help with your ability to retain and understand these very, very important principles from psychology, from the APA. All right, so that's it for now. That concludes our first video for week 1. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to let me know. I have put up here my cell phone number. If you would like to text me, if you prefer to text versus maybe writing an email or calling me, please feel free to do so. I encourage you to do that. All right, so for now, that's it. Happy studying, and we will see you then on the discussion board.